ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast Fred Rogers doesn't want you to hear. It's Monkeys and Playbills.
Fred Rogers or his little puppet Daniel. Right? It's Daniel. The little lion tiger thing.
On the drive here, we were trying to remember the names. There's King Friday as well.
Yes.
King Friday is the puppet.
Yeah.
The king puppet or whatever. I kept getting it confused with the Big Friendly Giant. Some of the characters from Big Comfy Couch, which were also these are other two other shows that were instrumental to my childhood.
That's right. And apparently to Rene Scott. Welcome, everyone, to Monkeys and Playbills. I'm Jillian Willems.
I'm Paul DeGurse. This is the show where we examine Broadway productions that had runs of 100 performances or fewer on Broadway, not counting previews.
And what the heck happened?
And today, we're talking about Rene Scott's Everyday Rapture.
Ooh, this is a big one.
This is a very fascinating, this is a unique case.
Yes, that's right.
I'm going to start by saying, usually in this podcast, the game has been what happened because no one sets out to do a show that does not succeed on Broadway.
Yes.
So the point has always been trying to figure out, where did this go wrong? What were the circumstances that led to this production not being everything that the producers hoped that it could be? Because we don't want to dunk on shows. That's never our intention. It's hard to put up a show. Artists, if artists sometimes make productions that aren't everything they possibly could be, that's not a sign of a bad artist. In this case, however, this show, and we'll get into the reasons why, but this show was a limited engagement.
Yes.
Was set to run under 100 performances. So, instead of discussing what happened, because we already know why it ran under 100 performances, I would like to suggest we discuss why this production found its way to Broadway in the first place.
Oh, that's a great idea. And maybe how it would compare had it been an open-ended run?
I think so.
Yeah, because I have some ideas about that.
Fantastic. All right.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Previews began at the American Airlines Theater on April 19th, 2010, opened on Broadway through Roundabout Theater on April 29th, 2010, and closed on July 11th, 2010, after 11 previews and 85 performances. So that's actually a pretty decent run for
Absolutely.
A limited engagement as part of the Roundabout season.
So this is what's important, what you're saying right here is it was part of the Roundabout Theater's subscription season.
Precisely.
So the Roundabout Theater presents a whole bunch of plays on Broadway, but the intention is not to have them be open-ended commercial productions, but to be a close-ended run similar to the regional model that happens in the US and in Canada as part of a subscription season.
And I think actually that's a really excellent idea.
It's a fantastic idea. Nothing wrong with it at all. This show was not in the Roundabout subscription season. If we were, what was this, 2010?
2010, yeah.
If we were in 2010 and you and I had been, let's go in on a Roundabout Theater season subscription, we would not have bought tickets to Everyday Rapture.
That's right.
We would have bought tickets to Lips Together, Teeth Apart, starring Megan Mullally. So what happened apparently is that during the course of actually rehearsing Lips Together, Teeth Apart.
Oh, it was during rehearsal?
This is what I understand, is that
Whoa.
during the rehearsals for Lips Together, Teeth Apart, Megan Mullally and the director really didn't see eye to eye in such a way that the process fell apart.
Whoa.
And the production had to be canceled.
Okay, I didn't realize it was during rehearsals.
I believe
was
that's
under
correct.
the impression that maybe it would have been in the prep portion and they would have had a meeting and then decided oh yeah, no, we don't agree.
This puts the Roundabout Theater in a very tough position where they have people who have already bought, so they don't just have to sell this show. They have to convince people who have bought tickets to Lips Together, Teeth Apart to keep those tickets for this new show. They have to pick a new show. And they probably don't have a ton of money for rehearsal. I would imagine they've lost money on Lips Together, Teeth Apart at this point.
Yep, absolutely they would have.
So they have to go, all right, Lips Together, Teeth Apart seems like kind of a well-written, intimate four-person dramedy. A bunch of straight people on Fire Island surrounded by gay people.
Yeah.
So how do you take that, and you've sold it as this Terrence McNally play starring Megan Mullally.
Yes.
Of Will and Grace. Very funny, hilarious. You need to put something in there quick that's cheap and that has someone with name recognition someone who people who like Megan Mullally are also going to be like, yeah, I'll keep my ticket for that.
Right. I would think that a lot of companies might just call it. Like, they might just say the risk of trying to replace a show actually could cost us more than just, not doing it.
So lucky for the Roundabout Theatre, enter Rene Scott. We're not going to talk about her history or her rise to Broadway stardom, because that's literally what this whole show is about. So we're going to talk about that plenty. But just to give a quick overview of Rene Scott, Rene Scott is a very talented, very skilled Broadway performer. Kind of broke big in, was it Dirty Rotten was the first one?
I think Aida was first.
Aida was first.
And then Dirty Rotten would have been like maybe the next year or two.
Originated Ursula in The Little Mermaid to a lot of acclaim. Originated Peppa in Women on the Verge.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
I believe. Done a lot of stuff, a lot of very cool stuff, and is also an enormous force for good in the Broadway and wider theater community, having founded Shk Boom and Ghostlight Records, which are committed to bridging the gap between pop and musical theater.
Cool.
And to preserving Broadway cast recordings in the most accurate way possible. Recorded things like In the Heights and Hamilton, and pretty much, if you've listened to a Broadway cast recording in the last 15 years, it's been by Ghostlight. That's a fantastic thing.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
She's also an artist or a writer in residence with Second City.
Yeah.
Which is really exciting. She's written a couple of plays. I'm really impressed with her as a creative force. I don't think I realized all the facets of Rene Scott.
As part of that, in the years leading up to 2010, she had done a cabaret piece for a benefit. It was called You May Now Worship Me.
Yes.
Which is that's a hilariously audacious title.
It is, you know, and also like quite fitting, I would say.
And it was a cabaret specifically for this benefit. Included song and storytelling about her life growing up half-Mennonite.
Mennonite Light.
And moving to New York. That was adapted by her and Dick Scanlan.
Yes.
Who is the co-book writer with her on this show. That was adapted to an off-Broadway production called Everyday Rapture, and it did very well there in a limited run. And that's what the Roundabout Theatre programmed into their season as a last-minute Hail Mary.
Right. So in terms of timeline, the benefit was when?
2008 at the Eugene O'Neill Theatre.
And then off-Broadway was the next year, 2009. And then this production was the year after that.
Yeah.
That seems fast.
Absolutely. So this is Rene Scott at really the height of her power.
Yeah. She's like, I'm a shark. If I stop moving, I will die.
We forgot to mention the other really important thing that Rene Scott did, at least to the first time I was familiar with her as a young musical theater fan, was she's the original cast of The Last 5 Years with Norbert Leo Butz.
Yeah.
Which was the original cast recording of The Last 5 Years was very important to me as a young person who was just coming into musical theater. The Last 5 Years is such an accessible show. It feels, it's high concept, and it feels very lofty when in fact it's actually very accessible.
Right.
It's the definition of contemporary songwriting.
Oh my gosh,
Jason Robert Brown doing a lot of good work. I will say I've come to like The Last 5 Years a lot less.
Yeah. Absolutely.
As I've grown up a little bit. But I think both her and Norbert Leo Butz set a huge standard for contemporary musical theater in that recording.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
If I were to burn myself a CD of hits of the Broadway stuff I wanted to sing at that time, it would be the stuff she was singing.
Be Strongest Suit. It would be what's the one from Dirty Rotten Scoundrels?
Oh, I'm Still Here, or French, still right?
Yeah, totally.
Something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I like heard my voice in her voice.
Yeah. So that's Rene Scott, and those are the circumstances that led to Everyday Rapture finding its way to the Broadway stage in 2010.
Although I will say that they had only 6 days of rehearsal.
Yep.
And then they went into tech.
Probably because of the situation they found themselves in.
Yeah, but they probably didn't need it, which we'll get into, I think, with the synopsis. You'll understand why they probably wouldn't need more than 6 days.
Once again, it's Rene Scott does most of the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
You know what? Y'all will hear it. Let's synopsize this show.
Woo!
Oh, shoot. That's my job.
So if this is your first time joining us here on Monkeys and Playbills, which I would maybe suggest going back, having a listen to some other stuff.
Absolutely.
But if this is your first time here, welcome. This is the game that we like to play. Just kidding. I like to play it, and Paul tries to synopsize. I don't know. Do you enjoy it?
No, it's a nightmare.
Oh.
I hate it.
Well, it's fun for me.
And me, the producer.
Yay! So Paul is going to synopsize as best he can from memory the important plot points of this play for us. This play with music.
All right, here we go. This show stars Sherry Rene Scott, and it is about Sherry Rene Scott.
Yep.
It takes place kind of in, I would say, like 4 big chunks, starting with her childhood in Topeka, Kansas, growing up half-Mennonite, but it seems like the half that she was Mennonite was very Mennonite, was pretty religious.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting she called herself Mennonite Light, but then went on to talk about how pious the family was.
As someone whose journey kind of matches hers in some ways, growing up in small town Saskatchewan as a half Mennonite, she's way more Mennonite than I am. Like if she's Mennonite Light, I'm Mennonite nothing. You know? So it tells the story of her growing up, including stories of her family, stories of adolescence and sexual awakenings. This is all through a mix of monologues and pop music. There's no original music here. It's all pop music arranged by Tom Kitt, done crazy musical theater Vegas-style arrangements. So that's kind of part 1 is Kansas.
Yep.
Part 2 is her moving to New York and having some adventures there. Part 3 is after she has had her kind of breakout success in Aida, because it's a whole chunk of her responding to a YouTuber, an adolescent YouTuber, a young man who posts lip sync videos of her.
Yes.
And it's by far the best part of the show. It's very funny.
Yeah, I would agree.
And then part 4 is, geez, I don't remember what's part 4. She just kind of
I guess
a
it's
bit.
maybe her relationship with her child, and it's sort of the, like, to put a bow on the rest of the show, where it's like you come back full circle to something she says in her opening monologue about insignificance and...
So within that, here's a few highlights of things that happen. Well, I'll say highlights and lowlights, because there's some stuff that I'm great on here and some stuff that is really no good at all. Mainly right at the very top especially, she throws around some racial slurs. And some things that are, I think the idea is she's calling back to this very conservative environment that she grew up in. But man, it was shocking, and it's really not okay. There's some anti-Semitic stuff. There's even, we're pretty sure we heard a slur for an African-American person.
Oh, wow.
Get dropped in there. That's no good. And it's definitely not necessarily framed in the way, giving her the benefit of the doubt that it's just a depiction of her upbringing. It's still not framed in a way that I love.
Yes.
So let's get that out of the way right now. That sucks. Don't like that. Other highlights, I'm a bigger fan of than that, include her exploring her sexual awakening through her relationship with the TV show Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which is very funny.
It's so strange.
She talks a little bit about her relationship with people who are involved in the Westboro Baptist Church.
Yes.
Which is very fascinating.
It
The Westboro
is
Baptist Church is a
fascinating.
very hateful, reprehensible organization from Kansas, right?
Yep.
So she talks a little bit about the fact that that was part of her life, which is a very fascinating thing for someone who is performing this in the very liberal New York Broadway circle.
Right.
She talks about a relationship she had when she got to New York with a magician. And it's worth noting some of this also, how does she say it? None of it is true. It's not all true, but it's
Right.
all accurate or something like that.
Yeah, something along those lines.
So this is not necessarily a totally 100% factual depiction of her life, but is kind of painting with broad strokes.
Yes.
So she talks about her relationship with a magician and eventually becoming pregnant with this magician and having an abortion and kind of the emotional fallout of that.
Yep.
And then she does this big section about this YouTuber. Then, as we said, wraps it up and kind of puts a bow on everything. All of this is with a ton of pop music. There's 4 people in the cast. It's almost entirely Sherry Rene Scott doing the heavy lifting. She has 2 backup performers who are Lindsay Mendez and Betsy Wolfe.
I know!
Who went on to become 2 of our finest performers since then. It's very cool to see.
It is so cool to see. Yep.
And this young man. Who,
Eamon Foley.
Aidan Foley. Absolutely. It's tight. It's about 90 minutes.
Yep.
What did you think of this piece, Jill? Now
Well,
that
there
we've
was actually just
laid that bare.
one other thing that
Oh, yep.
I felt like is pretty thematically important is her constant struggle between Jesus and Judy Garland, like
Yes.
feeling pulled in those
That's very
two
important.
directions. And I think that kind of weaves its way through most of the play.
That's right, because she does this thing where she sings to this picture of Jesus, and it's very sacrilegious, and there's a lot of, I'm sure her Mennonite family was not a fan of it at all.
Yeah.
So that's in play as well, and that also kind of lends to the tongue-in-cheek.
Yes.
The potentially tongue-in-cheek. Like I said, I really don't think it lands, but the potentially tongue-in-cheek nature of the first bit there.
Yes.
Speaking of things her Mennonite family was not a fan of, she also talks about the relationship she had with her cousin.
Yes.
Who was unfortunately shunned by her family, like officially shunned in like there was a ceremony and everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How did I miss that?
When she sings "Get Happy" at the funeral. Nope, I'm misremembering.
No, she sings "Get Happy" in
At the mental health facility.
She sings I can't remember the name of the song, but it's like you're gonna make me love you or something like that to Jesus.
Yes.
Right.
At her cousin's shunning ceremony.
Right.
When she that whole section of her singing to Jesus about how horned up she is for Jesus.
Right.
Is at her cousin's shunning ceremony.
Right. Oh. Jill, what do you think of this piece?
Okay. Well, okay. Here. Okay.
That's a big question to ask right now, maybe.
Okay. I'm going to read the synopsis from Broadway.com.
Great. Oh, good. Yep.
And then I think we can get into the book and the message and how we feel about that. Because I kind of think it's all wrapped up into one thing.
I think that's fantastic.
Okay, so from Broadway.com, they say, Everyday Rapture is the semi-autobiographical story of stage star Rene Scott, a small-town Kansas girl with a half-Mennonite background. Scott details how she followed the call of New York City all the way to Broadway, now a successful real-life semi-diva. We'll get into that later. Scott uses this play with music to chronicle her climb to the middle of the top. Again, we'll get into that later. Giving audiences comedic glimpses into her religious upbringing, musical flashes of her dangerous journey into the depths of YouTube, and a more complete portrait of one not-so-average blonde Broadway bombshell. Like, I'm sorry, you can't call her a blonde Broadway bombshell and then, like, try to tell me that she's, like, semi-successful. Sorry. It just... Can you tell how I feel about it?
It's this very... I'm glad we were able to say at the very top of the podcast what big fans we are of Rene Scott for the work she's done.
Yes.
So that we can have that out of the way to say, this is a weird show, and I'm not sure how this plays. This played to almost universally critical acclaim. It's hard to find someone at the time who had a bad thing to say about this show. And I have a lot of trouble with a lot of the things in this show.
I'm going to read out our credits real quick.
Totally.
And then we'll get into the book and how we feel.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I think most of the problems are actually tied to book by Dick Scanlan and Rene Scott.
Yep.
They've written a couple of shows together. They're a decent team. And Dick Scanlan you may know from Thoroughly Modern Millie.
That's correct.
Music arranged and orchestrated by Tom Kitt, our friend from Next to Normal.
Absolutely.
American Idiot, which I always forget.
Not only a fantastic composer, but a really talented arranger.
Yes.
Yep.
Excellent arranger. And then music by a lot of people, including Tom Waits and Elton John, and Arlen is in there.
Bono and the Edge, U2 is in there.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
If you couldn't tell, this is a jukebox show.
This is the weirdest jukebox show we're ever going to cover. It's so fascinating.
Okay, here we go. The book first? Yeah, okay.
The book first. Well, let's talk about the nature of cabaret as a style.
Okay.
Because there is no question this is a cabaret piece.
I mean, you can see that has been a part of the creation of the piece.
Oh, do you disagree that it's not just a straight-up cabaret piece now?
Well, I think they tried to not be.
Yeah.
For this venue.
Yep.
Like, they were like, let's make it more of a big show. Let's put some glitter on it. I don't know. Whatever. I
agree completely.
Yeah,
to me, everything in the book, the way the book is written, the way the book is performed, is very much a drink in one hand at a bar with 50 people in it cabaret.
Yeah.
This book is weird.
So besides the really like problematic moments at the beginning, I feel like the whole opening monologue tells the story of the whole play. And so I was very confused. I was like, why is this 90 minutes when the first 7 minutes tell us the whole thing?
It's a very bizarre thing where the book spends a lot of time on beats that don't even seem to me to be that interesting.
Yes.
And then the show only really started to click in for me around the YouTube part, just over halfway through.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Where I was like, oh, now this is a character. Rene Scott is portraying a character, a version of herself that is really funny and interesting and engaging. And there's no question to me that maybe rather than doing this chronologically, you should have started there or something, or found a way to start with that character. Because off the top, it feels like Rene Scott and Dick Scanlan going in were like, well, we're going to do this chronologically because that's how you do this.
Right, yeah.
And it really doesn't seem like the best path forward.
Even though she was in one of the more well-known, not chronological plays of all time.
Exactly, yeah.
But it was like, she forgot that.
Right.
And was like, we can't play with structure. Like, we just have to go top to bottom. I don't know.
That makes me laugh both because of that and because I saw Tenet last week, like the Christopher Nolan movie.
Okay.
It's all about people moving backwards through time as well.
Yes, the poor man's everyday rapture.
Yeah. That would have been fun. I don't think there was another option, though, I guess. Like, when I look at it, I don't know. I like her more seeing it from top to bottom.
I mean, there's some really funny lines.
Oh, yeah. Oh, what's that one about modulating? No matter what God said, I was going to modulate. Like, for some reason, that's very funny. Oh, that is so funny. And in the moment where it's happening, I think is when she's performing Get Happy, and she goes into her own kick line. Yeah.
There are those moments. There's things like performing Get Happy at a at a home for people who are mentally ill. Things like because it's like she's talking like she did when she was from Topeka.
Right.
Presenting those without any context or further explanation. Maybe it's something that flew in 2010, but with a 2021 hat on, I was like, there's got to be a better way to have that. Just doesn't play. It's not playing for me right now.
Yeah.
So that's pretty frustrating.
So in terms of structurally, or I guess plot wise, it's a little egotistical, I guess.
Yeah.
Which one would expect from a one-woman show.
Its first title was You May Now Worship Me.
And I prefer that title because it allows us to acknowledge right away the whole thing. Yeah. Because I felt really weird watching it because I was like, are we supposed to like you, but you're calling yourself a narcissist? And then I'm like, oh, well, I don't really want to like a narcissist. Yeah. But then I'm like, okay, maybe I need to go and accept your journey that you're on. Like, it just all felt really weird because it was like, are you trying to be modest, but it's really false modesty? I don't know. It just made me feel kind of yucky.
It feels like there is maybe this, in 2010, there was this acceptance and this knowledge of who Renee Scott is as a persona.
Right. Oh,
and
sure.
And that's something that 10 years later, and to two people who have never lived in Broadway or been a part of that community, that just doesn't exist.
Right.
And the show doesn't function outside of that knowledge.
Yes. Okay, great point. So like the geographic context.
Both the geographic and the time context. Because even doing some research and some reading, I came to understand a little bit more. And like I said, came to have a great deal of respect for Renee Scott.
Oh, yeah.
There was no key that I was like, oh, that's what she's doing.
Right. The other thing I wonder is like this show is not for me. Because, okay, I think it was like Hemingway or Twain, who said that when you write, you're supposed to just pick one person to write for.
Sure.
And that actually does broaden your audience.
Absolutely.
I just think I was not that person. And that's okay.
That's okay. Yep.
I just need to like name that. That this show is just not something that I necessarily relate to.
Yep.
What do you think as a Mennonite superlight?
This show is also very clearly not written for me.
Right.
Which is surprising because, like I said, going in, I was like, oh, I'm a half-Mennonite from a rural community.
Yeah.
That this has the potential to be something really exciting.
Totally.
I was frustrated that there wasn't more exploration of how tough religion is on and how hard it is to reconcile religious beliefs with the liberal arts, basically.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Like the push and pull of that.
Yeah, it just kind of seemed to be, they both exist.
Right.
And that's, as a half-Mennonite, I'm like, that's something I've thought about a lot and talked about a lot with my family and worked a lot of stuff out. I'm lucky enough to be from a Mennonite family who is much more liberal than Rene Scott's family. There's no shunning. There's gay people are very welcome, all that stuff. It was frustrating to me because there's no question in my mind that Rene Scott, that there's a story here that's worth telling. Going through it, I was like, is this part of the story worth telling? And if so, actually tell it.
Totally.
Or is what's actually worth telling the bizarre experiences you've had as a Broadway star with online personalities or something.
Right.
Because that's interesting.
Yeah.
And now we're telling a story and it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
As well, like I found myself a little frustrated. The whole magician storyline was interesting. We got some pathos, and then she goes and she has an abortion, and that's very, very powerful. But then it's done and it doesn't really have any impact after that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is interesting. I feel like this show, I can't believe I'm saying this, might need to be longer. and less like self-indulgent because the messages she's trying to get at are very good, but because it's framed with like her as a person, it's hard to get past that and into the meat of it.
Yeah.
So maybe it does need to be longer, or maybe the exploration needs to be just more specific.
I would strive for exactly that. One of the two. I think more specificity would have been a huge boon to this book.
I think it's kind of like you said, Paul. Like, I think I was missing any sense of vulnerability from her.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily need that in a one-person show, but like, that's why the abortion storyline felt so out of place for me, because it's like, we've been keeping things pretty light up until this point, like shunning ceremony aside. So to kind of throw this in here in the last minute was like, she got a note in a workshop of like, more sadness
more sad stuff.
and humility, and this was the best way to do that. And I just think that like there needed to be a balance between the self-indulgent persona she was playing and being a person.
Yes, totally. Ben Brantley's back, everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's
Ben
obsessed
Brantley
with this show.
He could not get enough.
He says Rene Scott's name so many times, and he's like, Sherry this and Sherry that, and it's so cute.
This is something in this show spoke to Ben Brantley.
It was for him. She wrote it for him. You know, it's very sweet. But he wrote a really interesting thing, and I took this these few words just out of context, because he hit the nail on the head about a one-person show, which is excavating her own ego. And he didn't mean it derisively, but for me, my experience watching it, it felt excavating in a bad way, like the tedious and often self-indulgent side of that.
Totally.
So he didn't mean it like that, but that's my takeaway.
Yeah.
So I think it works on both sides.
I can agree with that completely. So with that said, out of 10 playbills, how many monkeys would you give the book?
I think 6.5, because it's hard to do this. I think it's hard to like even choose what parts of your life to talk about.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned this earlier, like the vulnerability of doing that, regardless of what our impressions of her performance were. I think that's worth some marks. So 6.5.
I'm going to go a fair bit lower. I'm going to say 4.5. I think that if the purpose of this podcast is what are the circumstances that led to Everyday Rapture finding its way into the roundabout season and on Broadway, I don't think the book was a player in that. I think some of the other things we're going to talk about are much more significant players in making this show the success it was. And I think the book holds it back, if anything.
So where are we at? Like a 5?
I guess that's the average.
Okay.
5.5?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the music and lyrics.
So as previously mentioned, it's a jukebox show. And I actually kind of like the songs they picked.
I do too. I think for the part of the show that's grown on me the most since my watch and listen, it is the music and lyrics and Tom Kitt's arrangements.
Yes.
Where initially I even I noted, this is kind of like Vegas-y and cheesy. and I don't like how broad some of this went, and like some of the choices are so broad.
Yes.
But I look back on it and thinking on it, I'm like, no, that's exactly what this show needs.
I know.
There's a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
there's Tom Kitt's clearly just having a blast
Oh my
arranging
gosh,
these.
yes.
And he's such a creative arranger.
Totally. He managed to make Take a Load Off Annie sound like 9 to 5.
Yeah. this is exactly one of the ones Yeah.
Don't. Like, I don't know. He got really excited about the bass, and
Yeah.
that was, I don't know. But it's cool. It's really cool to listen to.
It absolutely is. I had written down, like, one of the first songs in the show, maybe even the opening number, is U2's Elevation.
Yeah.
And I had written down that, like, at the time I was like, wow, that's a weird choice. Mm-hmm. And then looking back on it, I'm just so charmed by it. I can't stop thinking about musical theater version of U2's Elevation and how charming that is.
Yeah.
Let me talk about Tom Kitt a little bit.
Yeah, talk about Tom Kitt for us.
Tom Kitt has had such a charming career trajectory, the kind of career that I think anyone in my position, any theater musician would long for, where he's kind of made this career composing really smart, accessible music. Mm-hmm. It's not so smart that it's hard to listen to. Like, you look at something like Next to Normal. It is a beautiful piece. It's it's sensitive, it's big, it's a rock opera about a woman's schizophrenia.
Yep.
And it does it. Unquestionably, it does it well.
It's so gorgeous. I will forever cry when I hear the song Light.
Oh, it's so
in or out of
good.
context, I will cry.
I get chills thinking about it. The other big reason I'm a big fan of Tom Kitt, Next to Normal is one of my favorites. Big fan of his work with Lin-Manuel Miranda on Bring It On.
Oh, yep.
I hope someday we find a way to talk about that. We find a way to bend the rules to talk about Bring It On, because Bring It On is a beautiful disaster of a show that I love, and it's bad. And I love it. But his really nice work is in American Idiot. He does all the arranging, adapting the Green Day songs to function in a musical context.
With different voices.
With different voices. Not only does he do that, but he keeps the spirit of the Green Day album alive.
Yeah.
So much so that I would choose to listen to the Broadway cast recording over the Green Day album these days if I wanted to listen to American Idiot. And I don't think that's a diss. I just think that's the version that is the more complete version of what it should be.
Yes.
And that was Tom Kitt picking up on Billie Joe Armstrong's vision and running with it.
At the same time as this.
At the same time as this. I was going to say, if I had to guess where his energy was, it was probably 75% American Idiot, 25% throwing together the cabaret arrangements for Everyday Rapture. But they're still very nice work.
Yep. I agree. Well, okay, I have one small problem.
Okay.
There's a key change that needs to burn. And it's in Take a Load Off Annie.
Right.
And it's like right toward the end.
Yeah.
And they get a breath, and then they're in a new key, and it's awful. It was like we don't get enough time to establish that we're in this new key.
Yes.
So then they sound like they're doing it wrong. Plus it's moving up, and it's really skrelty. And that's my only knock against the music and arrangements.
Fair
is
enough.
like that one thing.
And in general, the arrangements are Vegas-y and cabaret-y and cheesy. You know, there's no nuance here. There's no subtlety here.
Yeah.
But I think that's what it was called for.
Yeah.
There was one maybe. What's the very end? What's the last song again? Up the ladder to the roof.
Oh,
we
yeah.
Go up the ladder to the roof. I didn't like that arrangement as much. That was a little too. That really felt like the end of a cruise ship show.
Right.
To me,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was maybe a little more nuance to be found in this arrangement.
Right.
Or a different song even. I couldn't really see why
Yeah,
Up the Ladder
maybe
to
that's
the Roof
what it
was
was.
other than the fact that it's a great song.
And
Anyway.
also, we have to acknowledge the amazing Aida callback, because
Oh, yeah.
that's really what we all want to hear. We
Yep.
want to hear her sing something that she made famous.
So that's in the YouTube thing where we've got the kid, the YouTuber, is framed by like a giant TV computer screen frame or whatever the case may be. The idea is he's a YouTuber who lip syncs along to Broadway performers. So it's him lip syncing along to ostensibly to share Rene Scott's original Broadway cast recording of My Strongest Suit from Aida.
Yes.
So it's very charming to watch him do that. And on the other side of the stage, you can see Rene Scott singing it for him to lip sync along to.
Yes,
It's very
so
nice.
great.
Yeah,
I love that.
Absolutely.
Because if I were going to see the show, that's what I would want. That's the moment I would wait for.
Absolutely. Let's hear some Strongest Suit. Let's hear. I'm surprised they didn't even do a few more.
Yeah, me too. Like, they really dragged that one out, whereas it could have just sort of been like a little bit of that, like the intro to that, and then they could do like a bit of the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. And
exactly,
then,
a little bit of the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh. But then I guess, okay, but that complicates the rights to the music.
I suppose it does.
That makes it more expensive.
Yeah.
But Elton John is so expensive already.
Maybe they got Elton John in like a deal. If there's other Disney in there, maybe they got it in like a package or something.
Yeah, like maybe she gave him a hug and was like, please.
And Jason Robert Brown was not interested in
yeah,
that.
he's like, I don't like hugs, but Elton John was like, all right.
David Yazbek was not interested.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Let's do it.
Out of 10 Playbills, how many monkeys would you give the music and lyrics?
8.5.
Absolutely. I'm very comfortable with that. Tom Kitt is a treasure. May he continue to do much more work.
That's our prayer every night.
Absolutely. Yeah. And please. Well, I just hope he's doing okay. You know what? I just hope he's doing okay these days.
Yeah. Should we get into direction and choreo?
Yes.
Or is it direction and Norio?
Ha! Oh, snap.
She went there.
Oh, snap.
Okay. Directed by Michael Mayer of Spring Awakening, Thoroughly Modern Millie, and, of course, American Idiot.
Right.
Musical director was Marco Paglia, Peter and the Starcatcher, and then some keyboard work as well. And like lots of conducting and stuff.
Yeah,
like
does great work in this season.
So much work, like very busy, but less in terms of like the creative work and music directing work, and more of keyboard and playing, which
after my own heart. It's a fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Choreographed or choreographed by Michelle Lynch. That is the worst word I've ever said.
Choreographed.
Ever. Okay.
Yep.
She's been an associate on a lot of things.
Yep.
But I think this was her first choreo gig, like Broadway choreo credit.
You keep on saying this because there's very little choreo.
There's very little, yeah. So she was the associate on Hairspray and Urinetown. Oh, and then did like a choreo for a play as well.
Great.
And then associate choreographer was Eric Sean Fogel, and the assistant director was Austin Regan.
I have very little to say about the direction in choreo here.
Because it was good?
No.
Tell me more.
In a show like this, I've been very candid on this podcast. I sometimes have trouble differentiating direction from overall vision.
Yes, yep.
And in a show like this especially, where we talked at length about the book, and so much of the onus seems to be on the book. As far as direction goes, I don't know, she moved around the stage a fair amount.
Yeah, like there wasn't much to be done.
Yeah, she hit emotional beats. She explored the emotional beats that the book suggested just fine.
Yes.
So in that case, way to go, director.
Yes.
The things I wasn't a fan of were the things that are inherent in the book. We don't actually get a ton of emotional depth. We do go through something like a storyline of a relationship falling apart and having an abortion. And we just kind of sit on it for a second, and now it's over to fun YouTube land.
Right.
And you get emotional whiplash, and it doesn't feel satisfying. But is that the fault of the director, or is that the fault of the book, you know?
Right.
The weirdest moment in the whole show is that shunning ceremony. Like, this is your beloved cousin that you've set up in the last 20 minutes of, like, how much you love him and how important your relationship was growing up. And now you're taking 5 minutes to do a joke song at his shunning ceremony.
Yeah.
You're going to have to draw me a map to what I'm supposed to be feeling right now.
Right.
Yep.
Yes. I also wonder, it's the director's job to make sense of the world that you're in, right? Yep. Regardless of what the text is saying, there is some freedom from a direction perspective. And in addition to that, the writer is literally right there. You know?
Absolutely.
It's like if you have a question or you want to offer, that is the most perfect context in which to do that.
Absolutely.
But then I go, okay, they had 6 days of rehearsal. Like, how much was anyone really concerned about this being better than it was off-Broadway or different than it was off-Broadway? Like, we're busy on American Idiot. Literally everyone was working on American Idiot. This whole team, the design team, like everyone.
This is literally the whole point of this, of bringing Everyday Rapture in, is this is going to go in quickly and cheaply.
Exactly.
And it's going to keep audiences happy.
Yeah. So it's like, if there's no obligation to change anything, because you're like, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's like, no, but it was broke already. Anyway, I wondered about that.
So in that sense, having discussed that, I think I am frustrated with the direction because there are those beats where there should be a little more nuance between sadness and emotional depth and the tongue-in-cheek nature.
Yes.
And I don't think this show quite marries that, especially in the first half.
Yeah. The conflict of that shunning ceremony should be on full display, but it just was not.
Yeah.
Okay, my other question is, again, because it's the director's responsibility to make sense of the world of the play.
Absolutely.
Who were those backup singers?
They were Lindsay Mendez and
I
Betsy
know.
Wolfe, and
To
they were
us,
fucking
yes.
incredible.
They were incredible. They sounded amazing. But what the heck?
I'd like to point out that in some of the credits for the show, they were listed as the Mennonites.
Oh, yeah, Mennonites.
In the score as well, I took a look at the score. That's what
She
they're listed
mentions
as in the
that,
score.
I think, in her
is
first
that in the book as
monologue.
well? That's
She's
very
like,
funny.
please welcome.
The
The
Mennonites.
Mennonites.
I think that's funny. I like that.
Yeah, for like a second. And then you're like, but what are they really doing here? You know?
Yeah.
Who are they really?
So it's obvious to me what their function is, like on a functional level.
Yeah, musically.
What their purpose is.
Yeah.
To give Rene Scott just a little bit of breathing room, a second where she can be at 80 instead of 100.
To bring
Makes
her a
total
glass
sense.
of water.
Exactly.
To whatever. Yeah.
Fill out the sound. Maybe Rene Scott's having a bad night vocally, and Lindsay Mendez just sings the whole thing because Lindsay Mendez is one of the best singers on the planet today.
I love
Who knows?
Also, to literally bring her a glass of water.
Yeah,
That
no,
happens
literally,
on stage.
that actually happens, yeah. But like, I think I had trouble wrapping my head around, are they her friends in this scene? Are they her family in this scene? Like, it was a bit cloudy in that sense. And also based on, and again, we'll get into this later, but what they were wearing didn't actually help us in any way either.
No.
So
Some clarity there would have been really valuable.
because I love them so much.
Yeah.
Like, as performers, as artists, I just wonder if that was one of the big balls that was dropped on this production.
While we're talking about them, let's get into the choreo a little bit. Because they're almost exclusively who the choreo ends up focusing on.
Correct.
This choreo is functional but underwhelming, is my first take. You know how sometimes when you're like, you have to do like a benefit performance or something, and you're like, oh, this needs some choreo.
Yeah, like,
okay,
we'll
so
do
we'll
some
step touch and we'll hand.
Touch it.
We'll step touch and hand. Is everyone good with that? Great, let's do it.
Yeah.
Some of it ends up feeling like that. And then we get to the YouTube thing with the kid, and the kid's doing a bunch of choreo, and he just brings it alive, and he's very funny. And I think that's because, we'll get to him, he's a very charismatic performer.
Yes.
So overall, functional but underwhelming. As a just an audience member, I wouldn't be grumpy seeing this choreo, but I'm like, I bet we could have done a lot more. I bet more creativity for the same amount of effort on stage would have served us well.
Yeah. I come back to who they are in the play. It's like, if we were more specific, like sometimes they were the backup singers and sometimes they were other people, then there would have been much more flexibility in terms of staging and choreo. But because they locked them into that backup singer world, it was like, well, then there's nowhere else to go.
That all kind of adds to this whole, sometimes this show feels like Vegas or a cruise ship show.
Yes.
And that's when it's at its least successful. So I think that would have made a huge difference in helping this to rise above that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Vegas or cruise ships are bad with things in any way. Those shows are very valuable.
Oh, yeah.
But
Oh, my gosh. And those performers
I think there's no question that that's not what they were trying to do here.
Right.
Except I would note, I thought that the Sexy Mr. Rogers medley was funny.
Yeah. Okay.
That was funny. And
That was for
Can
you,
we call that
Paul.
choreo? She's like rolling around on a box while she's singing to a picture of Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
I thought that, and it's like,
that feels so wrong. It feels so wrong to me.
I like that.
But again, not for me. It was not written for me.
I refuse to see Mr. Rogers as a sexual being.
Yeah.
I can't
do it.
And I found that funny. I thought that was a very funny thing.
Yeah. The McFeely line was great. Do you
totally.
remember that? That little gag?
Probably my second favorite part after the YouTube.
Like, really, my biggest note about it is, like, it's a decent enough joke, but wow, we're still in it.
Yes.
5 minutes have passed and we're
still doing
in
it.
I
Yeah.
like
We
I like
get it.
I
You
like
want to jump Mr. Rogers' bones. Okay.
Yeah. So here's my last thing that I'll say about this choreo. I have actually, not that recently, but a few years ago, was a person who was tasked with choreographing for backup dancers. And so
I was going to say I, a few years ago, had a sex dream about Mr. Rogers. I swear to God, that's where I thought that was going.
No!
We got quiet and we're all in.
Oh my God.
Yes. A few you're talking about
Breaking Up.
On Breaking Up is Hard to Do at Rainbow
Yeah.
Stage, another jukebox musical that has
Yeah.
2 backup dancers.
Exactly.
That's a show specifically about a dinner theater.
Yeah.
It's about a dinner theater?
It's about the Catskills.
It
And
takes,
so
it
it's
takes place in the Catskills.
Yes.
And those backup dancers and singers are
Yeah.
functioning as backup dancers and singers in this show within a show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I understand the challenges that come with how do you make this interesting
Absolutely.
when this is the convention, right? However, I think in the show that I did, it was just that's who those characters were.
Yeah.
And
You have that advantage.
when they were performing, that's the nature of it. Plus, it was set in a time where you were tied to your microphone, right?
Yeah.
It was like the 60s.
Yeah.
And so, you're behind this mic. Whereas, with this show, I don't know. So I do understand the challenges with that framework, but I would have probably, if I would have been the choreographer, I would have pushed harder to break out of that more.
No question, Michelle Lynch is a skilled choreographer.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't have gotten this gig if not. And I bet a lot more clarity over who those backup singers and dancers are supposed to represent would have given her a wider toolbox to create something beautiful.
Yes, 110%. However, Ben Brantley doesn't think so. He loved this choreo. He said, quote, even Michelle Lynch's choreography is double-edged, mixing showbiz slickness with the awkwardness of the terminally introspective. And I was like, I didn't get that at all. But again, I wasn't there in the room, so maybe there were things we missed.
We have heard Ben Brantley be far harsher to a lot more.
Yeah,
It's
Tisha's
very
literally way
fascinating
better than
how
that.
much he loved this show. This is easily the nicest review we've ever seen Ben Brantley give anything.
Yeah, he's like
Easily.
obsessed with this show.
Yeah. It's
wanna know
so
why.
fascinating to me. Why? What is it about Everyday Rapture that just tickled your pickle?
What was it
Yeah.
for you? Okay, so should we put these two together?
I would
Direction
love
and
to. I'm
choreo?
happy with that. Yep, absolutely.
Out of 10 Playbills, how many monkeys do you give the direction and choreo, Paul?
6.
Oh, that's nice.
Okay, where's your head at?
5.
Great. Okay, good.
Yeah, not
I thought-
far off.
Yeah.
I just, everyone got on stage. Everyone moved around the stage.
I think 5 and then an understudy slip because I'm probably the only person who thinks that Sexy Mr. Rogers is funny. And I
Yeah,
think it's
that's
pretty
true.
funny.
Yeah.
So, if the question is, what were the circumstances that led to Everyday Rapture finding its way to Broadway?
Yeah.
I don't think it was the book. I don't think it was the direction and choreo.
No.
It may have been the music and lyrics.
Okay.
But let's talk about, we have 2 more categories to go. The design and the performances.
Scenic Design by Christine Jones, who was at the same time working on American Idiot.
Jeez, are you kidding me? Did they get like a discount if they were like
I think that it was
on
like
the
a
American
package
Idiot
deal.
creatives?
Yeah, probably. But Christine Jones also worked on Cher's show recently.
Sure.
And did Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Parts
that's-
1 and 2. So
That's
this
a nice
is
design. That's a renowned design.
Yeah. So she's really excellent.
Yeah.
Costume design by Tom Breaker, who has been the costume designer for Saturday Night Live since 1994.
That's really cool.
Who designed costumes for 30 Rock and was in it as the costume designer.
I know who that is. 30 Rock's one of my
Yes!
favorite shows. I can pick out that person.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So, because I went onto his IBDB page and it was pretty empty. Like, it
Yeah.
was like Everyday Rapture and then one other thing.
No.
And I was like, this doesn't seem right. It's like something seems wrong. So I
But it's all
Googled him and it was just like,
All the TV shows that film in New
NBC
York instead
everything.
of LA.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
why he's in New York instead of LA.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
very busy in that regard.
Yeah.
And I think probably a good choice for this. We'll get into that later.
Yes.
Lighting design by Kevin Adams, who's done a ton of stuff. Spring Awakening, The Cher Show, and what else? American Idiot.
I'm just
design.
imagining them all
I
in
know.
2 theaters next door.
I know.
Lunch
or like
break,
on headset. and- yeah, in one
They've got 2
space.
headsets. They've got one headset connected to Everyday Rapture next door.
Or the rehearsal rooms are separated by like a curtain. So they can like poke in and out. Okay, where was I? Oh, yes. Sound design by Ashley Hansen, American Idiot.
Yep.
Kurt Eric Fisher. So there's 3 sound designers.
Sure.
Kurt Eric Fisher, sound designer on Rent and a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
And Brian Ronan, who I am assuming would be sort of like the lead sound designer. But I think he was also working on American Idiot at the time. So he was like, sense. I'll call in for reinforcements. Yeah. But he's done everything. Like he did Charlie Brown in 99. Oh, cool. He did Book of Mormon. Like just a real deal sound designer. Yeah. Projection design by Daryl Maloney, also American Idiot. Yeah. Hair design by John Barrett, who doesn't have any other Broadway credits, but I Googled him and I get the impression he is a famous hairstylist. Okay. Like just like an actual hairdresser who became famous in New York. And then makeup design by Tiffany Hicks, who, congratulations, Tiffany, you've now moved on to interior design, and I just want to congratulate you on your career shift. Yeah, absolutely. That's everyone.
I was not prepared for that list.
Yeah, no.
That's an enormous list.
Massive.
There's really not much design in this show, right? Like, there's not much going on, right? For that list?
Say
am I crazy?
The biggest elements were probably the lighting.
Yeah.
And sound.
Sound design, that's a big sound design, yeah. Yeah. And it worked really well.
And again, it's tough to know because we weren't there in person, but that's my assumption. Yeah.
Personally, I don't take issue with anything.
Yeah.
Especially knowing the context, especially knowing, I'll bet the option was either do this set for $10, or do the design for this show for $10, or do this on the Lips Together Teeth Apart set that's half built. Like that's, I think those were their 2 options.
Yeah.
I don't take objection to it, but it's really, there's virtually nothing for me to talk about.
Yeah. I think the lighting I noticed more than anything.
Yeah.
And I thought it was nice. It was simple, but effective. And they used it would be so funny if they just used the lighting plot from Lips Together, Teeth Apart. They were just like, screw this. We'll just use the plot and make our own lights. The hang's already done, that's fine. The hang's done, yeah. I will say, the 2 things I hated the most were the costumes for the backup dancers, the Mennonettes. Yep. I thought they were so stupid because, and I also hated Sherry Rene Scott's outfit. It was so stupid. Yeah. But I'll tell you why.
Yes, please.
Because I hate 2010 fashion.
There you go. Yeah.
I hate it. Like, I look back on it and I'm like, what was I wearing? Yeah. Like, what was I thinking?
Absolutely.
And I feel like it just reminds me of that so much that I was like, no,
I don't. So funny.
I don't want it.
So it might not even be a bad costume design. It
no,
might have been,
at
the
time
necessarily. It was like, oh, they're dressed in really nice contemporaries.
Yeah, I feel like the Mennonettes are still the wrong costume though. Yeah. But again, that circles back to who they are.
Totally.
Right? But Sherry Rene Scott's I'm sure get behind if I just didn't have this disdain for the fashion of the time.
Yeah. And see, I didn't get contemporary fashion. I thought she looked like she was about to perform in Branson, Missouri. Yeah. She looks very 1970s country star, which makes sense in the context of like when she grew up and where she grew up.
Yeah.
But I also don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a bit pedestrian and not in the right way. So that's the only like real major flaws. I really liked the projections though.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
They got goofy projections of Mr. Rogers. They've got a goofy projection of Jesus at some point.
Jesus like moving, like nodding and being,
that's pretty funny.
That was so funny to me.
And it's funny as well because I can see where it's like, hey, our projection designer bud who's working on American Idiot. Yeah. Do you have like a weekend to make us some projections to do this?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. So yeah, that's how I felt about it.
Okay, let's do the rating. Out of 10 Playbills, how many monkeys?
7.
Yeah, I'll do 7. I'll take 7.
Yeah.
I'll take 7 with the caveat being, if the question is, what was it that brought Everyday Rapture to Broadway, it certainly wasn't the design.
No.
No. There's no question that this is especially the American Idiot design team. Can you come in for a weekend and make this?
Yes.
And as a favor to the Roundabout Theater, they came and did it.
Yeah.
That's fine. It was good. So, let's talk about the performances.
So we've already covered who everyone is, right? Sherry Rene Scott as herself.
Yep.
Lindsay Mendez.
Yep.
And Betsy Wolfe as top harmony and bottom harmony. I don't know. What are their names? Like, they don't name them. But the Mennonettes.
I think Lindsay Mendez top
Their names are Harmony and Melody.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not. I made that up.
And then Eamon Foley as our lip-syncing YouTube star.
This cast is awesome.
I really like everyone.
Yeah. It's so funny, as we alluded to earlier in this podcast, to see Lindsay Mendez and Betsy Wolfe, who had already at this time were doing very well and were on a trajectory to be the enormous stars and workhorses and excellent performers that they are today.
Yes.
It's so funny because any of them could carry this show.
Oh my gosh,
You know what I mean?
yes.
They're so skilled.
Yes.
And Eamon is a show stealer, I think, specifically for that as well. This
Yep.
is his last Broadway credit, I believe. Before that, did some work in Gypsy. Did,
Oh, okay.
The Kid in Assassins and the Assassins revival.
Ooh, neat.
Did 2 seasons of Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Oh, that's where we know his name from.
And then did 13, which I'm sure we'll cover someday.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, this cast is fun.
Yeah, I
Really
like
it. So much so that, and I will say I really like Sherry Rene Scott's performance, just on a performance basis. I like a lot of it.
Yeah.
This is a big mountain to climb, doing essentially a one-person show.
About yourself.
About yourself. And while it's not perfect, not note perfect, there's a lot that I really like there. If we're talking about what was it that brought this here, there's no question in my mind it was the performances and Sherry Rene Scott's performance.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
went, Megan Mullally's out. People who bought these tickets want to see like a powerhouse woman perform on this stage and be kind of sassy and irreverent and energetic.
Yeah.
This kind of fits that general vibe, even though content-wise, it doesn't really seem like it's in line with Lips Together in a lot of ways.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's my diagnosis. Where's your head at?
It feels weird to criticize Sherry Rene Scott's performance because she was technically playing herself. Yep. So then if I criticize the performance, then it feels like I'm criticizing her. But I actually think that maybe she wasn't playing her true self, so I can separate them a little bit.
She's clear about that. Where it's like, these aren't things,
that's
this is not
true.
a factual depiction of what happened.
Yeah, so I thought actually in terms of her acting, her storytelling, she was very engaging, which I don't think I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting, but I thought her text work was really good. She had me captivated in some of the moments. And the energy that she comes out with is really great because she sort of gets you hyped up for her, and then
it gave me like Mom on Vacation in the
I was
Mexico
gonna say
vibes,
like Ellen
you know?
DeGeneres dancing.
Yeah, totally. This is like Mom's on Vacation.
Yeah,
this
Mom's on
week.
Vacation. Yep. Totally. So as we know, Ben Brantley is like totally obsessed with Sherry Rene Scott.
Enough. This is Ben Brantley's favorite show he's ever seen.
And he writes, quote, "Miss Scott has never shined brighter or more illuminatingly." Never? Okay. I mean, he's seen more of her than I have.
I suppose so.
So I will trust that.
Just overwhelmingly, Ben Brantley cannot get. And this was echoed by a lot of the reviews at the time. A lot of virtually across the board, to be honest, people big fans of Sherry Rene Scott's performance, and rightfully so. Like we said, there's a lot of magnetism and charisma that is lost. When you're not seeing live theater live.
Yes.
Anyone who's seen a digital production this year knows that. So if you're just watching a boot or something, that's a bit of that's going to be lost. And even in that, Sherry Rene Scott does a very nice job. So I'm sure it was pretty electrifying to watch her in person.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So further to your previous point about that being the reason that it would be chosen,
Yep.
I think that's correct because when I think about Megan Mullally and I think about who she is, she's a celebrity, but she's pretty niche.
Absolutely.
You know, unless you've seen her in Will and Grace or heard her, she sings, like she does some cabaret stuff.
She does.
So in terms of finding a performer who is at that same level, so not too expensive or not more expensive, right?
Because this is last minute. We got to go.
This is a last minute put in. So you're like, okay, who is easily recognizable, approachable and funny, and is not a celebrity, and that will have to pay them like a bazillion dollars to do this.
Yeah.
This is the most appropriate substitution.
I can see the logic for sure.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing that it worked out like that.
I look at this and I I think that the diagnosis is correct. That's why this show got brought in. Like we've talked about, I'm really not convinced this show hits the way it's supposed to.
Right.
At least it didn't the way I received it. And for that reason, I'm like, man, I bet maybe there could have been something else that we could have put in that would have worked out better. That said, it's a tough situation for the Roundabout Theatre to be in. And this was the best choice. Great.
And it did well.
It did very well for itself,
like
from what I understand.
It really held up. And I think that's saying something. Because if you get, let's say you're like a week into previews and everyone starts telling each other, you need to get rid of your ticket. People will cancel their ticket if they really feel like it's not going to be good, if they've heard that it's not good.
Totally.
So
we've talked about Rene Scott.
Yeah.
I wish there was more to talk about for Lindsay Mendez and Betsy Wolfe.
I know, me too.
But just to say that their charisma shines throughout the entire theater, throughout the whole world.
Yep.
They are angels of light. And I want to give him his own special section.
Yeah.
Because he is so funny.
Yeah, he is really funny.
I thought he was so funny.
Like, his comedy is very clean. Like, it timed really nicely.
Yeah. There's something about addressing the internet's Broadway culture.
Yeah.
That's so funny. This is a culture that we are a part of. Hello to anyone who's listening from the internet Broadway world.
Yeah.
It's good to see you. And that's such a fascinating niche that's kind of blossomed on the internet and on YouTube specifically, it looks like.
Yeah.
And so having that addressed and the bizarreness of that addressed in kind of a really loving way.
Yeah, it was
very, very charming to me.
Yeah. And it was kind of self-deprecating on the part of Rene Scott, which is why I think I like this part so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it was like, oh, good. Now we get to the thing of like how you really felt about something that was happening.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was cool.
Yeah. So with that said, out of 10 Playbills, how many monkeys would we give the performances?
9.
Ooh, good number. Yep, I'll go 9.
Yeah.
Rene Scott's a 7.5 for me.
Yeah, okay.
But Lindsay Mendez and Betsy Wolfe are great, and Eamon was extremely charming.
Yep.
And that boosted up a little bit. Really good performances, easily the strongest part of this show.
Yeah.
It's this show is born on the back of the performers. Even more so than others. All shows are, but this in a big way.
Yes.
Let's talk about the Tonys this year.
Okay, this was a weird Tonys, and I want to clarify with you, were we hanging out at this Tony Awards?
We must. I have distinct memories, because we haven't talked about 2010 Tonys yet, but I remember...
This is my favorite Tonys.
...watching Catherine Zeta-Jones with you.
Yes, okay.
Either we watched it together or we talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
Was this the awards show as well, where she won the award and then talked about how much she loved having sex with Michael Douglas?
Basically, she was like, and to the man I get to sleep with every night. And you're like, oh,
I told Daphne about this. Daphne did not believe it.
Yeah,
Daphne could not believe that happened.
That happened. It was a wacky Tonys.
It was crazy. And this was up for Best Musical was Memphis,
Yep,
Fela, and American Idiot.
$1 Million Quartet.
And $1 Million Quartet.
So I think it was the 64th Tony Awards were on June 13th, 2010.
You're totally right.
And the cutoff for nominations was on April 29th. And this show opened, Everyday Rapture opened on the 29th. So it was like literally the last second. It was amazing. So they were right on the cutoff date. Sean Hayes hosted, because that was the Promises year, I think.
Yep, absolutely it was.
Yeah, so Sean Hayes hosted. Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to bring up, Tony Award drama from that year.
Yes.
Okay, so the Tony administration decided on the 30th, so the day after the nominations were closed, that American Idiot and Fela were ineligible for the Tony nominations for Best Score because fewer than 50% of the score was written for the stage production because of like...
So it's a jukebox.
Exactly.
Well, that's bullshit.
Yeah. So that happened. And then also on May 14th, so a few weeks after nominations had closed, they withdrew the nomination for Best Costume Design for Ragtime, like for that revival, because the costumes were based on the original costumes.
What?
And like, yeah, so it says here, Santo Lacosto's costumes for the revival of Ragtime are predominantly those from the original 1998 production and therefore do not meet the Tony rule, which states work that substantially duplicates work from prior productions is ineligible. That's drama. Anyway,
between that and Memphis taking Best Musical, which was I remember being shocked at the time.
Yes, absolutely.
And Catherine Zeta-Jones
oh my God.
walking away with Best Performance, literally after doing her performance.
That was
and it
so
being
bad.
dreadful.
It was so bad.
But on the plus side, she gets to go home to Michael Douglas
Yes,
and his
she
magical
acknowledged
lovemaking,
that.
apparently.
She acknowledges that that's the true gift.
That is the true.
the
That's the
awards.
real award.
The real award is
Michael
getting
Douglas.
to sleep with Michael
Actually,
Douglas every night.
Many people don't know this. It's actually, she mentioned it because there's a little Michael Douglas printed on every Tony Award. It's a bizarre piece of Tony trivia.
Spinning medallion has his face on one side.
So she was saying, now I have two.
Yeah.
I have Michael Douglas's.
It's like- oh my God. Okay.
Oh.
So, yes, you were correct. So, Memphis won, and then also nominated for Best Musical were American Idiot, Fela, $1 Million Quartet.
This is a weird year. There was
It
something
was a
weird
really weird
going on this
Tonys,
year.
too. I
Yeah.
remember feeling really strange about it.
In the year where where Catherine Zeta-Jones takes Best Actress,
Right.
and it seems like just an award for the name.
Yes. So Everyday Rapture was nominated for, I believe, 2 awards.
Yep.
So Sherry Rene Scott was nominated for Best Actress in a Musical. And it's so funny because it always lists your character. And so
Yep.
it's like Sherry Rene Scott as herself.
Yep.
I remember being like, what? That doesn't make sense. Like not understanding the nature of the production.
Yeah, totally.
At the time. And then they were also nominated for Best Book. So her and Dick
There you go.
Scanlan were nominated, but of course no wins because the little tiny show.
Yeah, great.
And it was a limited run, right? So
Yeah.
what for?
Wow. Someday we'll talk about these Tony Awards a little more.
So because of the Tonys not necessarily contributing to the closure of this show, obviously, because,
Yep.
Limited run, I did a bit of digging in terms of the statistics of what some shows were selling
Nice.
in order to see if I thought that Everyday Rapture would have ran over 100 performances had it been an open-ended run.
Yep.
And I've come to a conclusion.
Okay, let's hear it. Where's your head?
I think it would have cracked 100 performances.
I think it would have too. Yep. Probably would have sailed to a smart 150 or something.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think so because if it would have been marketed properly, it could have done that.
Yeah.
Of course, that's such a big question mark when it comes to a lot of the shows that we talk about is like, oh, it wasn't marketed properly. And so it wasn't supported in the way that it needed to make those performances. So I think if they would have, had an open-ended run, marketed it properly, we would have seen over 100 performances of Everyday Rapture.
So Jill, should this be a musical?
Kind of. Like, I'd almost rather hear the story from someone else.
Yeah.
Like, I think I appreciate what she's trying to do.
Yeah.
But I do not relate to her, a person talking about her semi-struggles, because they never really felt like real problems.
Nope.
So I don't feel like I want to listen to someone half discuss the conflicts in their life who has been a very successful person and then called themselves semi-successful. Like I would rather hear this from someone who is on the up and up or, just from someone else.
I couldn't agree more. I think there is a show in here that would even have life outside of being performed by Sherry Rene Scott in a significant way. It's just got to be rewritten, re-examine all that. Like I said, there's all that problematic content that really, we can't have that anymore. Shouldn't have even had that in 2010. You got to re-examine that, and I think re-examine the actual structure of the show.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that also ties into my problems with the marketing is like, I don't think you could have it both ways. I don't think you can say that you're a semi-star when you're kind of not.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Like you're not a nobody and you're not half a nobody.
Yep.
You've been in some pretty big stuff.
Yes.
Yep.
And like just own that. Say, this is the true behind-the-scenes story of my real life. It's like...
Yeah.
But you're trying to play it off like you're some kind of C-list Broadway celebrity, and that's really not playing.
Yeah, it's yucky to me.
Yeah.
We like you, Sherry Rene Scott. We're here to see your show.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Absolutely. We're on your side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we like your success. Like, I think maybe she's afraid to be like, I've done it. I did it.
No, but dude, you founded a record label. You started in shows.
Own
you
it.
created things. This is great.
Own it.
It's fantastic.
Flop, bop, or make it stop?
Let's flop, bop, or make it stop. Jillian Willems. Is this show... Whoa, it doesn't really apply here. But let's see. It can still apply.
I think we can make it work.
Yeah, so, is this show a flop? In an emotional sense. It was not a flop financially. Is this show a flop in the hearts of the worldwide theater community?
Yeah.
Is it actually a secret bop, or a not-so-secret bop, like Ben Brantley says? Or is it so bad we need to make it stop?
I don't need to make it stop necessarily. I just can't decide if it's like a flop or a bop.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
Because I'm like, there's nothing about it that's like really jumping out at me to be like, yeah, I need to listen to this over and over forever and learn every line.
I think this is, as it stands right now, a flop.
Yeah.
Because this show can't exist outside of this production.
Right.
In any substantial way. Without Sherry Rene Scott. And not just Sherry Rene Scott, but like we discussed, the context that surrounded her at that time.
Yep.
Sherry Rene Scott and Dick Scanlan, this could be a secret bop with some work. And if you would like that, please let us know. We're happy to consult.
Yeah. Wow.
That's it.
That was it.
That's Sherry Rene Scott's Everyday Rapture. The story of a young semi-Mennonite, half-Mennonite, and her journey to Broadway.
I'm not going to lie, like before knowing what this show was, I thought based on the like synopsis that I had found that it was going to be similar to like Kimmy Schmidt.
Ha! Oh yeah. Of like super naive, learning how the big city works.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
I really thought that because I was like, oh, I'd watch that. That's like
That sounds fine.
Kind of nice and probably a pretty accurate depiction of what it would feel like to go to the big city.
Oh,
I
that's
don't know.
so
But
funny.
yeah, that's what I had in my mind. So thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you for listening. Please don't forget, if you like what we're doing, to rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends. We love what we do. Get in touch with us. We're happy to chat always.
I would love to hear from you.
For now, bye.
Bye,
Thanks for
Daph.
listening.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, this is producer Daphne speaking. Thank you all so much for listening to Monkeys and Playbills, the show where we take a look at Broadway musicals that had 100 performances or fewer before closing. To learn more about the show, you can follow us on Instagram at Monkeys and Playbills Pod, on Twitter at Monkey Playbills, or email us at monkeysandplaybillspod@gmail.com. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/monkeysandplaybills. Monkeys and Playbills is proud to be a Village Conservatory for Music Theater podcast. Original music for the show is provided by Paul DeGers, and the show is produced and edited by Daphne Finlayson. Thank you all so much for listening, and join us next week where we take on Tuck Everlasting.